We do have a workshop meeting here tonight, obviously, where we'll be reviewing our Town of Pine Plains sewer feasibility study. My name's Rory Chase. I'm one of your outgoing town board members anyway, but good to see you all here tonight. Hope everyone's feeling cozy. I just wanted to give a little brief background, I guess, for everyone on some of the whys of how we got here today a little bit. And I think you'll find that my comments are broadly centered around our downtown here, our town's commercial district, which is its own little zone. But I happen to live in that district and have some insights into what it's like to be there too, which I can share with you. But as you all maybe know, we have some lovely businesses downtown, but we've got some empty open spots down there too. We have a variety of different lot sizes, which is part of the problem. Some larger, maybe 3/4 acre lots, a couple of them, a few half-acre lots, many quarter-acre lots, some 1/8 acre and even 1/16 of an acre lots in our downtown, so pretty small stuff. I'm going to do a bad job citing the year in which the county sort of changed their rules surrounding what's required for septic, but maybe our consultants could help me out. I'm going to say it's been 20 years now, at least, maybe, that the county's rules have changed. And as you can imagine, most of the septics and enterprises and businesses in our downtown are older than 20 years. But at that time, 20 years ago, the engineering requirements for septic became more stringent. You had to sort of over-engineer what you were putting in place. You had to observe a number of setbacks from the property lines and other structures. You had to make sure that you had 100% expansion room, which is one of the biggest components that can be a challenge on those very small lots that we have downtown. Our downtown, of course, being the place that we've identified for generations as being where we want our commerce to happen and where our business activity should happen, and where our comprehensive plan says we'd love to see our growth rather than out in the margins, but we'd love to see our downtown become vibrant and vital again. And in the many conversations we've had over the years, it seems clear that there are impacts there's something impacting the types of businesses that we get in our downtown, and the ways that new businesses can come in, and that the biggest impact, in my sense, and I think others too see this, is what's required on the county level for septic. How much space you need, how much room. If you have a property in the downtown that's been used as a diner for years and then you want to change it to a cafe, the county might see that as a change of use, and you would have to then become conforming to what the new codes and standards are. So we have a great downtown that has wonderful businesses in it, but they're sort of in the footprint that they can exist in. There's not much growth that can happen there, or at least for certain types of businesses that require greater flow, or even a greater density of residences, which we find appearing in what's called those mixed-use structures that might have housing on the second story and a storefront on the first story, which is the kind of thing we see in Pine Plains already. But a lot of the systems in our district already are too small for different uses that people might want to have. I'm going to cite my own self as someone who bought a house many years ago now, right across from Peck's Market, that I would have loved to have turned into a restaurant, and I did the work, getting an engineer to come in and help me figure things out, interacting with the county. I was able to get a variance for the setbacks. They would have permitted me to have my expansion room all the way to the property line. They would have permitted me to have expansion room under my garage if I wanted. I have a 1/4 acre lot. And as it turned out, all I could fit in there, should I want to continue moving forward, would have been 18 seats, which wouldn't be enough really for me to continue and want to move forward. And I would imagine that experience has happened to many people every time they come in and have the idea that here's a great downtown I'd love to be in, but as they get a little further into the process, they realize there's something holding them back, and that seems to be where the wastewater is going to go, where the extra space for the 100% expansion room for your septic is going to go, et cetera, et cetera. I've got a few other little notes here that I'd be happy to mention too. But suffice to say that in our conversations, it seems as if a central wastewater system really could sort of be the simple solution that would allow enterprises to just tie in. There would no longer necessarily be questions about what type of business you could have, or 18 months down the line, after you figure out what you could do, could you actually do it, then you've got to build it, but no longer would those sort of prohibitions be in place. It seems timely now to talk about this as there's a national conversation about infrastructure, and there's some things happening here in our own community. I think I'm thinking of like the Durst development largely, which is going to be, we see it happen, and I think we might, will bring in quite a number of new residents and a lot more commercial activity. And I would love to see Pine Plains as a place where people who are going to there might want to come to, into our downtown, to enjoy all the different businesses we have. So suddenly there's this opportunity where there's some increased demand, which is also something we've been lacking here in Pine Plains, looming on the horizon, which is very exciting. And if we could imagine a downtown that had the capacity to service those different businesses, I'm rather confident we would see our downtown continue to grow. Our town zoning document already imagines the potential for a center sewer district. It lists clearly increases in total lot coverage and density of habitation and use that could occur there. So just pulling this out, but I look at the drugstore in town, I see the parking lot in the back, like Webb Travis is there, it's like a parking lot on our main street. I imagine there's a septic system somewhere under there, but I imagine they don't actually really know what's in place. Certainly a change of use of the pharmacy wouldn't happen without something big going on. But suddenly if there was a center septic, you could have those empty lots that are kept empty maybe because there's a septic there, or you need the expansion room. Suddenly you could have a building there, and the wastewater could go somewhere else. You look at our downtown, there's like these little empty spots in there, consultants have come through, and I've heard people mention even more recently, it's like a beautiful mouth that's missing a couple teeth down there sometimes, there's those empty spots. And I think we have a real opportunity to be able to move forward and see some of those spaces filled in. We've got a new town board coming in, which is really exciting, and I hope they pick up the ball with some of these opportunities that are sort of in front of us in the near term as well. I guess, Pine Plains, we all know, has some of the best draining soils in the county, but that doesn't really matter ultimately. We still have to conform to their rules, meaning we cannot be non-conforming when we want to move forward with these different uses. We could take advantage of those great draining soils with some sort of centralized shared system for like a large, leach field, drainage field for dealing with those wastewaters. And I get excited when I think about a downtown, I'm terrified of the notion, that threat analysis of a downtown that can grow no more, that it's at its limit. We're seeing it at its peak, its most dense that it can be. I thrill to the notion of a downtown that is more filled in and has more business activity in it, where people can come in and instantly perhaps even start a business, where we could have, the largest landowner in town, maybe the diocese that owns this huge Catholic church lot. At some point they're going to want to do something with that. But we could see a housing development out there, I would imagine, that sees density right here in the hamlet, people that could walk to these businesses that would hopefully infill. I'm trying to mention some of the why we've been having this conversation, but the people that can talk about the how and the what and the where would be some consultants over here from Tig & Bond. We've got Erin Moore and her associate here who are going to lead a presentation today on our sewer feasibility study, which I'm sure will be wonderful. But very excited to have you guys, and thanks. I give you the floor. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Rory. Yeah, so I'm Erin Moore from Tig & Bond. This is my coworker, Kyle Courtwright. And so that I can just sit back down. I think Rory covered some very important items there. If you were with me back in July, one of the most important things we did was host a lot of stakeholders, meaning folks we had identified, businesses that were very likely desirable to be served in the sewer district. If you attended in July, you're going to hear a lot of the same information because our big point was to engage some stakeholders to make sure if there were comments, we could address those comments and then finalize the report. And so this is the presentation of the final report. it is a very early stage of wastewater feasibility. So just as was described, and certainly this is not a unique situation. There's many, many communities up and down the 22 corridor. The Village of Red Hook right now is about to break ground on a very similar small system. There's a little bit bigger than what we're recommending here, but this is a very, very common theme in Dutchess County and Columbia County and Westchester County, is small communities with little main streets that have no wastewater service. So in general, this is a common situation. Environmental regulations keep rolling. I think one of the things Rory's referring to is there used to be not a separation between groundwater. Now there's 4 feet between your highest groundwater level that they want to see the bottom of a wastewater system. So that's a challenge here also, as we found out. And so I'm going to present to you the finding of our study, but again, it's the feasibility study. It's the first level. Could you do it? Where would you do it? How much would it cost? And then there's a lot of different stages moving ahead as the town decides, is this something that you support moving forward or not? So just keep in mind, first pass. Can it happen? About how much? And what do we do from here? That's where we are right now. So I mentioned that. Let's just talk about our scope. First thing, do you need a sewer system? Is there parcels that absolutely there's really no other alternative for? That's our first thing we're looking for. And then if the answer is yes, where? What do we do? So our tasks are sewer district need and then delineation. If there was a district, what would the boundary be? What parcels would you recommend be in it? The second item is wastewater flow development. So now you've got your area. How much wastewater does that generate? The third item is then, what do we do with it? Where do we take it? How do we get rid of it? And the fourth, putting it all together, that work of those first 3 preceding tasks, into a report document, and how much will it cost? And that's the big one, certainly. So that's our tasks. What are the questions? So why complete this study? Rory went through a lot of that, obviously to maintain a healthy, vibrant downtown community center, to keep that rolling. Increase foot traffic for businesses that want walk-by traffic. Attract other businesses and residents to the hamlet. In general, quality of life, if we're interested in having a vibrant, healthy downtown, and allowing for businesses that have tried in the past to expand to do so, versus being told by the health department, no, you're done, you're at 18 seats and that's it, there's no additional room. So why Pine Plains? Again, you're not in a very unique situation. There's a whole bunch of communities right now who are in a very, very similar. So I'd said Route 22, Millerton, Amenia, up into Columbia County, Copake. You're going to find yourself in between those. Bigger than Copake, smaller than Millerton maybe, but really similar communities. Continuing, down the other way, Westchester County, Pound Ridge, if anyone's ever been there, that's closer to the Village of Red Hook. Pretty big hamlet, downtown areas that with absolutely no wastewater service and constantly finding themselves and their businesses struggling with the Department of Health. Particularly if you're a restaurant, so many end up in hold and haul situations where they have stopped using their on-site system and their septic tank is just regularly being pumped, which is really expensive. So again, while there is no one-size-fits-all for this, in general, there are many, many other communities looking at this very topic right now, so not unique. Why now also was mentioned. There is more funding for wastewater service than most people will say since the original Clean Water Act, when many municipal wastewater systems got built. So there's multiple aspects of this. Clearly, infrastructure is a big deal right now, and there's many funding sources for infrastructure. for economic development. But then there also is environmental considerations and your watershed and drainage area and on-site systems, like their proposed system, they discharge to groundwater. Right now, Dutchess County and most other places in New York, they want 4 feet of soil to feel that it's treated appropriately before it joins the groundwater system. And in generally, in most places, that 4 foot, you're not going to see under all seasons. So environmental considerations and also economic development, there's more funding and grant funding for improvements like this that we've seen in a long time, and we probably won't see again for a while. So when this is a topic you've talked about over time, this might be the time to get it done in an economic manner so it becomes an affordable project. And so why are we having this meeting? As I said, in July, we tried to engage and invite all the stakeholders, meaning folks who would probably be in the district and have an economic impact to their parcel. But at this point, the goal of the town is to communicate with the entire community. This is your town, even if there isn't a fiscal responsibility that would end up on your parcel. Do you want it? Is this something the community supports? And again, to the stakeholders, meaning the folks who would be in the district, if you're not enthusiastic and supportive of this project, then you need to communicate that to the town, because that's the driving force, is whose parcel and whose quality of life can be improved by this project. If the answer is no one's too keen on it, then speak that up and let it go, because this is truly the type of project that you want a heavy, solid level of community support behind. To get this right and to get it done in a way that's going to benefit everybody. So I noted, you can stay where we are for 2 seconds. We had those 4 tasks. What parcels may need wastewater service? How much flow would they produce? How to collect and treatment? And then how much would it cost? So I'm going to turn this over to Kyle for a bit to talk to those first 3. Who needs service, how much flow, and how to collect and treatment, and then you're going to get me back and I'll talk about costs and where do we go from here. Take it away, Kyle.
Thank you, Erin. All right, so yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we kind of came up with the district, what it might look like, and how we got there, and then what the treatment and collection system might look like. So this image here kind of shows the outline in the black dashed dot of the proposed sewer district. And we kind of overlaid it here on top of the zoning districts here in the town, just because I think it kind of paints a bit of a clear picture of why we kind of ended up with this delineation. So we sent out a survey quite a while ago that the town did, and it became pretty clear on who would kind of benefit the most from this district, as we've said. And Rory said it's really those businesses in the center of the town. It seemed like everywhere else the soils are great. There generally isn't very many septic issues throughout the town. So you can see here the proposed district essentially extends east over to Pine Street, or 1 parcel past that, north to the edge of the Hamlet Business Zoning District, and it includes a couple of parcels that the town acquired, and then west over to the parcel across from the Church Street, and then south down to El Guacamole. And we've kind of expanded it here, a few parcels here and there beyond the Hamlet Business Zoning District, based on some feedback from certain parcels that said they had some septic issues or experienced some interest in connecting to the district itself. And then we've also not included a few parcels in the Hamlet Business Zoning District because they said they were not interested in connecting. And then these next 2 slides are just some aerial images that kind of show the same delineation, essentially, in each quadrant, if you will, around Main Street. Here's the one on showing the church property where we're proposing the septic system, or the treatment system and disposal field to be. And there is one, kind of looks strange here, but there is 1 parcel that was excluded in that preliminary district delineation because they indicated they weren't interested in connecting. And here's one final photo shows it from the corner over to approximately Pine Street. And there's one really tiny parcel there right at the end across from Pine Street that we included. All right, so just to kind of summarize kind of how we ended up there with that proposed district. Again, focused on the smallest parcels that are going to have the issues or potential issues with expanding their septic system or upgrading their businesses there. And again, that really just supports the comprehensive plan goals of keeping businesses within the center of the district, as Roy mentioned. So again, we're proposing the district around the Hamlet Business Zoning area, and then it's expanded a little bit here and there for those who have septic issues or want to connect to the system, and then excluded a few that did not want to connect to the system. All right, so then the next question is, once we got the district delineated, is how much flow would it be? That's kind of the big question from a design perspective for when you're sizing these systems. So what we did is we used water meter data to kind of come up with the best, most accurate estimate for flow we can come up with. And essentially for this proposed district, we end up with 13,500 gallons per day for an average day design flow, we call. And then we also considered future flow estimates. So, speaking a lot to what Rory said, we need a plan to have enough area to, in case things expand, you see some more businesses in the district, if there's some development at the church property, if businesses or restaurants have a few more seats, how much extra flow should we plan for? And we came up with approximately 20,000 gallons per day. You need an area approximately for 20,000 gallons per day for treatment and disposal. All right, so getting into kind of some of what the district or the actual system would look like. Starting first with the collection system. So what we're proposing is considered an alternative type collection system called a septic tank effluent system, which just means you still have septic tanks on each parcel that take care of the solids, and then all you're sending to the treatment system is the clarified water. So all the solid removal will be at the parcels. That helps in a couple of things. Number one, you don't have to do solids removal at the treatment system, which just requires different process components. It also allows you to have a little bit smaller collection system piping, which helps with costs as well, because you're only transporting liquid. And then, so for these type of systems, usually they're on the back side of the parcels. The pipe will run on the back side of the parcels, because that's typically where septic tanks are. This is subject to change, obviously, during final design, but this is kind of a preliminary layout we were thinking, showing everything going towards the church property there. All right, and then treatment system. So once the flow makes it to the treatment location, what we're proposing is also considered an alternative treatment technology. Instead of kind of a conventional wastewater treatment plant, which some folks might think of when they think of a bigger community, a city where open, big concrete tanks. This is a little bit different where it's a pretty simple system. It's essentially a series of partially buried tanks that have a media inside. So essentially the wastewater percolates over the media, and there's a biological growth that happens on the media, which helps treat the wastewater essentially. This is an image of one of the tanks up here on the right with the lids open, and then here's a picture of a very similar system installed down in Hyde Park. You can see the tanks are for the most part buried. There's some other buried tanks here, and typically all you need is a small building that houses some of the electrical components and equipment and a generator and some security improvements. And then once the wastewater is treated by the treatment system, it will go to a subsurface disposal system. What we're proposing here is called a GGSF system, which stands for a geotextile sand filter. It's essentially a kind of a fancier leach field like most of you probably have in your backyards. And then, so why this system? There's a number of reasons. Number one, low visual impact, and it works with the community goals and the aesthetics. For the most part, everything's underground. This picture here on the left is a very similar system in Hillsdale. It's back behind the Stewarts in Hillsdale. Again, you can see there's not much there to actually see. Most of it's underground. Also, these systems they're pretty simple to operate and maintain. You will need to pump out septic tanks just like you do now. That would be part of the district. The operator and the district, in this case the town, would set up a schedule, and the septic tanks would be pumped out on a schedule. Also, subsurface disposal is generally lower costs to build and to operate compared to a surface discharge, which a surface discharge is more typical with a conventional treatment plant where the effluent or the treated waste water goes directly to a stream. And that's less expensive because you have to treat it to a higher degree for a surface discharge. And one question we get a lot too is why not just build a big septic tank and a big leach field, just kind of like most people have in their backyards, just a bigger version of it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is that when you have a treatment system in front of the disposal field, it allows you to have a little bit smaller leach field or disposal field because you're not relying on the soil to actually treat the wastewater, microorganisms in the soil to treat it. You're just relying on the soil for disposing of the clean treated water. And more importantly, the treatment system also protects the disposal field. So if you, for example, somebody puts something in the septic system that they're not supposed to, or a lot of grease or oil, that could cause some havoc on your leach field. So the treatment system will help protect that. All right, so now we're getting to the where. We looked at a couple of locations during the feasibility study, but the one we're recommending is a treatment and disposal field at the church property, right behind us here. There's a couple of really good things about the property. Number one, it's large. It can support this size system. It's very close to the hamlet center, and it has really good soils. It seemed like the soils are pretty good throughout the town here. Has really pretty fast percolation rates, which is 1 to 2 minutes, which is good. It just means you can have a smaller footprint for your disposal field. It also allows for the most part, a gravity collection system to the treatment system, which just helps reduce costs because you're not pumping into the treatment system. And a couple of negative things, or not really negative things, but challenges with that location. So we did a couple test holes, and generally there was some signs of high seasonal groundwater. About 30 to 36 inches below grade, it seemed like. And like Aaron mentioned, that's just a challenge with meeting the requirements for the bottom of your effluent pipe to that high seasonal groundwater level. Dutchess County typically likes to see 4 feet of separation there, which will be hard to achieve. But you won't be able to achieve it here exactly with the soils that are on site, which just means you're going to have to bring some soils in to mount it up a little bit to achieve that separation distance. And the only other thing that can be seen as a challenge is right now the parcel isn't owned by the town. All right.
Thanks, Kyle. Okay, so I think that's the quick summary of who's in it at this stage, feasibility stage. So there's a lot of flexibility, and again, this is a continuous community communication process of as this developed, if there is certainly border parcels or other parcels or people speak up and that this would be something they're interested in. There's nothing locked in at this stage. this is where we stand at this first phase. Is this a good process to continue or not? And where it would be based on our recommendations. And we looked at several parcels around the town. Groundwater elevation was consistent, certainly, but from a space perspective, there's the most flexibility with a larger, obviously, space to work with than a smaller space. And additionally, then, what would we do once we got it there? So then how much would it cost? So Kyle hands that back to me. I get to do that part. Thanks, Kyle. The total cost is $4.2 million. It includes a reasonably hefty 30% contingency number, and also financing costs. So 0 grants, a financing figure, and land acquisition costs. So we've been very, very generous with this number. This is not a low ball, let's just say. We've really tried to put everything in there. So again, that includes engineering costs, full construction costs, land acquisition, 30% contingency, and then all the financing issuance costs, assuming we would go through a state financing process, and would able to get at least low interest loans. So that it's a conservative estimate. It results in an annual payment on debt of about $200,000, $205,500 a year on the town. So, is this affordable? The EPA says it should be less than 2% of your median household income for it to be affordable. And that would be less than $1,158 a year for a single family home. The New York State Comptroller says it should be less than essentially $700, $696, plus hookup fees to be affordable. And so at this rate, where we are is, we could certainly hold, there's so few single family houses right now in the district, you could keep that at around $1,100 a year. Small commercial though is around $3,000. And in general, if we just do the simple math, the cost per year divided by 32 parcels, you can see we're around $6,420 per parcel per year. So we're not there yet. We're not at the affordable level. So what do we do? What do we do to make this affordable? And as I said when I started talking, this is the time right now where there has been more dollars and potential grant funding, so not loans, grant funding for infrastructure and wastewater. This report is one of the tools we use to start pursuing that funding. All of the grants in New York State, the report must be done in a very specific format. This report has been done in that format to meet the requirements of any funding agency that the town could pursue. So you've got a tool in your quiver now to look for grant funding. And again, what we've presented assumes some good level of low interest financing, but no grants at all at this point. So USDA rural development, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, the WIA, it's open right now. The town has not gone forward or formed a district. That is a huge funding source that definitely will be used as we talk about the infrastructure funding bill. And community, Dutchess County community development. But right now what we have pursued was back in July, we did submit to the EFC, is the Environmental Facilities Corp. It's the funding arm of New York State DEC. So they actually have it divided up into 2 agencies. And so there's a water quality improvement program grant. They have not decided on any grants. Wouldn't it be great if I knew? I said, oh, you've already achieved a grant? But no, they have not made any phone calls or made any decisions on this grant. All these applications that were done in July. But we did submit to try to start this process because the grant funding process is absolutely one of the quality of your project, but there's a little bit of squeaky wheel too. So you apply often and with great enthusiasm, and you wear them down eventually. So the town has a really great track record right now. This entire project was funded by grants. So through Dutchess County and through New York State DEC provided the funding for all the work that Kyle and I have done. By taking that step, spending the grant money. Believe it or not, often communities apply for grants and then end up declining it and doing nothing with it. By doing the work and showing you follow through, that actually elevates the town in your fundability, because it's shown if you are allotted money, you're not in 2 months or 3 months or 6 months going to turn around and say, you know what, no thank you, we're okay. It makes you more appealing as a fundable entity when you've shown you'll take grant money and do what you were supposed to do with it. So that's a good track record for the town in your ability to qualify moving forward in the future. There's some other methods we'd like to consider in conversations with Dutchess County. So there's a relationship between Dutchess County and New York State DEC. Generally, a system like this is a state-governed system, but in Dutchess County, they review this system. 4 foot is a Dutchess County item. It's not actually the state requirement for separation distance. Given the quality of the wastewater effluent, it'd be really nice to revisit this topic and have a good conversation with Dutchess County, because 4 foot is equal to about $100,000. So that's a place that would be at least a nice discussion on, can we talk about 3 foot? Can we, based on the quality of the effluent, and see if there's some savings there with not having to bring in soil to the site. And that also has grading costs. Picking up additional users that are far-flung are not cost-effective. But if there were additional users very near to the site that are easy to pick up, that helps make spreading the love around, right? With easy, cheap way to connect. More users equal more people funding the project equals a lower cost overall. So if there's additional users to pick up who want to be in the district and are close by, are not, 2 miles over the hill to pick up, that can help lower the cost of the system as well. So that's definitely, as far as, those things where we're very focused on making sure the town knows your opportunities and how you can bring the cost down lower. But at this point, getting in line for infrastructure funding, that's what's going to make this certainly an affordable project. So we did do, as I've mentioned a few times, a stakeholder engagement session back in July? April.
It's been a while.
I don't know what's happened to this year. It's gone really fast. We talked with the proposed owners, so, and there is, at this point, a pretty substantial level of support in the hamlet, in the business district, among the folks who are interested in this, if we can get it affordable, who'd be willing to pay for this. So that's the important part, is those who would see the bill, see the value they would get out of that bill. That's very important to establish. Certainly, some of the important feedback is there needs to be a lot of good, close coordination with the church parcel owners to understand what they plan to do on their parcel and what we would need as far as area on the parcel to make this all work, and see if there's a great symbiotic relationship between their needs and the town's needs and how they envision that parcel to be used. So that is a very important next step moving forward, to make sure we can come up with a plan that meets everyone's needs. And we noted it. The development that was mentioned is not in any way anticipated to be connected to this system, but it is important to note if there's I mentioned Amenia. They have a huge development that was built very close to their downtown, but their downtown isn't able to take a great advantage of it because they don't have wastewater service and some of their businesses are very limited. And so that's a very interesting sort of similar situation where you have a nearby development project can increase your foot traffic in the very center of your hamlet, if that's desirable. So we've noted that there could be increased nearby population, but the plan in no way would be based on serving that development or that group. So we've noted that there could be some great availability for some additional people who want to be in the hamlet, but that this wastewater system would not serve that development. So what's the next step? As I said, funding, we applied for an opportunity of funding. We can't apply for the WIA because the next step is district formation. So what would that look like? Again, the biggest point here is like, get this topic out. What are the comments? What are the thoughts? What is the district? Who really wants to be in the district? What could we develop? And then a report that's a very truncated version of what we've done. Who's in it? How much does it cost? What are we going to do? It's a succinct document, but it becomes the legal basis and is required by the state of New York. It's called the MAP Plan and Report. It identifies, again, all the costs, who's in it, and then there's a way of engaging the folks that are in the district. And there's a few different methods to do this. One is by petition, which means every single parcel can come in and sign something maybe in town hall where there's a notary and identify, yes, I would like this, or no, at this price, or no, I wouldn't. And then the alternative is to do it in a vote. From a cost perspective, it's best to do it when there's a vote going on anyway, just so you don't have to set up the whole voting implementation. But the point is that the New York State district formation wants to engage every single parcel owner who would be paying. I guess, assuming this goes without saying, but New York State rules for towns, you cannot charge anyone who is not being served. So any resident that isn't being served has no financial implications from another parcel being served. Just to make that clear, if you're not being served, you're not being charged. There's no fee that would happen to a parcel in general. So the map plan and report document gets established, and it can set a rate. Just, this is what our rate's going to be. And then it's the town's job to keep going after grant funding. So it creates the district, but if the funding doesn't come through, if we're not able to secure it, it doesn't obligate the town in any manner to proceed, especially at a rate that's uncomfortable for its users. So there's a lot of caveats here in keeping this process moving, but that includes, I don't want to say escape mechanisms, but yeah, if it's not affordable, there's nothing obligating the town to continue to proceed on a project that's not affordable for its users. However, for instance, couldn't apply for WIA because you need a district to be formed. If the district isn't formed, that grant source is not available to you. So there's good ways to make sure residents and parcels are being protected from a financial perspective, but still qualify to go after the grant funding that would make this affordable for everyone.
So to be clear, you can form a district without committing to the process while you look to secure your grant funding.
Right? So you can say, what is our number that's affordable?
Yep.
And it can sit until you can get yourself to that number that's reasonable for everyone to go for. And you're not committed to go ahead until that number's memorialized in that legal document that goes to the New York State Comptroller. So it doesn't commit you to proceed. You're essentially, as the town committing, we're going to figure out how to deliver this system for this dollar value per different users. And every single parcel that's in it has to have a number associated with their annual fees. So let's say we started the district formation process. If we started it right now, just to try to get a timeline, by April of 2022, the town should be pretty far along into that process. And then if you rolled right in, so this train just started going, there'd be a wastewater system operational in 2024 is what I'd estimate at this point. So that's it's not like a, overnight thing, definitely. We're engineers, but I can't, we don't wave wands and make wastewater appear. Although I wish I could sometimes. That'd be a great superpower for me. So that's essentially where we are. I also brought these pictures, but I think I'd like to just show this again. So this is Hillsdale. I like this quote from their website. So a series of town-led initiatives in the year after 2000 helped Hillsdale experience something of a revival that continues to expand and reshape the town. For example, after decades of concern, Hillsdale leveraged grants to fund the development of a hamlet sewer district. Years in the making, the result was a 21st century, much admired infrastructure that's enabled new businesses to launch and continues to attract new residences and businesses to the hamlet. So this was in the center of Hillsdale, that was a store that rented VCR tapes, like even when that no longer was a thing, with residential above, and the tattoo parlor. So I don't know about you, but I am an ice cream parlor type of girl. And so that's an ice cream parlor now, and the general store, and there is retail on all levels of that. So that really expanded this square footage. So at this time, for the system, so this is immediately leading up to that area we were looking at, all residential. So right now, this closest building that's hidden behind the tree, that's residential, but every other building you can see heading up towards the ice cream parlor and the general store, they've all got small businesses happening in them. I think I've got one more. Nope, that's it. There's a few different, because I didn't have a picture of the brewery. That's strange for me. The Rojan Brewery in Hillsdale also is connected to the sewer system, so I gotta I'll have to think of some reason to get a picture of that.
They got that Crossroads restaurant, which is so delicious there too.
Yeah, yes,
I talked to
absolutely.
that guy, David, he said to me, no way he would start that business if there was not center sewer and Hillsdale. And I'm sure that's the case for all those other businesses.
So that's where the project is. That's the steps we've taken to get through it. I really invite any questions that we can, and also it doesn't have to end here. If there's questions that involve us taking a look at something and coming back, we're happy to do that. I think it's a solid presentation of the work we've done, but really the next step depends on the enthusiasm of folks in the hamlet. Is this something you're interested in pursuing? And then there is a lot of path forward to do so. So, sure.
You mentioned other sites that you looked at.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, my concern is the large property right in the middle of the hamlet, prime real estate, potentially. A little concerned about that. What are some of the other sites that you took a look at?
So, it's very important to be at least proximately close. So we looked at some sites that we could do surface water discharge to. They were really challenging, and from a cost perspective, the surface, so that could be a much smaller parcel, right? It was just really challenging, and so many of the flowing waters here go to impounded water bodies, so that's not great. From an on-site perspective, we had reached out to the school. The school originally thought they would be interested in at least us taking a few test pits, and they ended up declining that. But based on the soil mapping, we would assume that'd be completely consistent with what we saw in the church parcel. And then the other parcel is behind Rory's property. There's a wooded parcel. If you look like straight down in the town, you'd see it. There almost looks like there was a sort of almost like a horse paddock or a track there. Great, same soils. Really small parcel, really tight to develop. So, but really similar soils.
And that's it?
Those were the parcels we could get access to. We just don't go onto folks' property and dig test pits. Those are the ones for on-site that were close enough.
And did the church say that they were willing to sell the property?
So there is absolutely communication with the church now.
Yeah.
And they have an interest in seeing this, but that's really the important next step is if the town, we're all in the same position, right? If the town's committed, they have interest, but we've got to come up with a plan that meets everyone's needs together. So there's certainly been communicated with quite a bit. And
There was an introduction made to the diocese. They were put in touch with the town. I think it's okay to mention it, but through Alexander Durst, which you could call it a favor, kind of, but reached out to whoever he knew in the diocese, and they instantly got back and said, okay, we're interested. We hear you're thinking about doing stuff. So whereas that conversation hasn't really happened over the last 30, 40 years, certainly in the last 12 months it happened.
the Archdiocese has a team from an engineering team from their perspective, figuring out what might be the best use of that parcel. And then, of course, we're trying to help from where we stand, which is in a preliminary stage with the wastewater usage. But there is a very open line of
How
communication.
much of the parcel are you planning on taking?
It all depends. if, right now, we've assumed, based on the zoning at the time, that they would develop 48 units. Now, if they want to develop more units, we would need more land. So there's a an inverse relationship there. And so they need, with their team, to say what we'd like to do on the parcel. And then from a wastewater perspective, they already have preliminary guidance from us. If you increase your number of units, how much additional area we would need, but they've got to come to their conclusion. And that's a great open dialogue that we're certainly hoping to further. So if they figure out what they want, they have already a good sense of how much land it would we need.
3 acres, 5 acres, that kind of amount, you think, as far as you have to estimate the amount of space required for?
How detailed? I think I can make it appear very quickly.
Okay. I thought you could.
Do you have it on the slide? Put it on the slide.
Yeah, I think that's where they do it, yeah, presumably. I think on along the street side, they would match it.
So this is what I mean by inverse relationship. So right now, face flow 13.5, that there's no development on the church property. If in the report we included 48 bedrooms at the property, and that's included in the 20,000 gallons per day and based on the size that we need, which is around total of 5 acres. If their requests for number of bedrooms go up, the amount of acreage that we would need increases. So they understand this relationship, and now they need to decide what kind of units fitting in with the town zoning would they like to see, and then they understand how much additional space it might require from whatever portion of the parcel. There's front, there's back. The parcel is super consistent with soils. Wherever it makes the most sense, being good offsets from neighboring residents, you just gotta, they have to figure out what they want, and then we can figure out how to accommodate it. But, you know, it's kind of a chicken or the egg.
That church lot has ingresses too, right next to the town library and onto,
It's 3 of them, right?
yeah, 3 of them. So there's multiple places where if they were to create a flow through there, they could do it very easily, without disturbing existing properties. It's crazy, it's so big.
Where I wanna,
Pat back there.
If the church says no, where do you go from there?
we absolutely, you have flexibility. We can get up to 20,000 in the other parcel we looked at, but that's it. That's the line in the sand there. There's no additional flexibility. And then that
will increase then if you have to use an alternate.
yeah, there's definitely, we have a backup plan. But if they're interested, that's the most desirable parcel from a gravity collection perspective and from other perspectives.
And who pays for the park, whatever they're gonna buy? The town has to pay for this property that the churches
I think
might sell?
I think that's the negotiation.
The sewer district would pay for it, not the town.
Yes. Oh, yeah, not the
Sewer
town.
district.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
the people who are,
Yep,
Sure.
who it services would have to pay for that parcel also.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, and that was part of the cost estimate, that land acquisition cost.
But that's also what you would be looking for grants for.
100%.
So, the grants, if you got grants to fund this infrastructure, then the cost goes down.
Yes, so Sarah, that's it.
Right. We
You
should
gotta
have.
find out if the town wants this first. You put a lot of energy into something before you find out if the town even wants this to support it, so, I mean, you make
Well,
an
this
assumption.
energy was paid for by grant funds, right?
But you seem to be saying you're not asking the town either, you're only asking the people that it involves.
Oh, no. Moving on to the next step is a town decision. When it comes
So
to
every
going to the
resident
map
of
plan and
Pine
report,
Lake.
to formally do that vote, to actually legally form the district, those who vote are the parcels who are served. But at this point, deciding to move on even to that stage, that's got to be your feedback to your
So
town
only
leadership.
people it affects get to vote whether or not
Yes,
they want it.
absolutely.
The town people who live may not want to see that, even though they're not affected directly, they don't get to vote. Like
Not in the-
neighboring people that might not want to look at that out their back door.
Absolutely. They're first here, but then I see you and I see someone here too. The yellow mask.
Martha Wagner or the district paid for the
pumping of that tank is absolutely a part of the district O&M cost. You wouldn't want, not that we don't trust each other to do the right thing on septic tank pumping, but you don't want that left in homeowners' hands. That would be part of the district operation costs.
And second, just quickly, is all the road work associated with putting the piping into the treatment plant, is that also part of all the costs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Over here and then down over here.
Is this whole plan seems to be contingent upon affordable housing being put in town? This plan seems to be accommodating, if we want funds for affordable housing, then you have to have in place sewers, okay? Now, just a minute, hey, excuse me, sir, you're rude. You're out of order. I have the floor. I have the floor. Now, I've been sitting, I've been thinking, which is dangerous, but I was thinking that there is something else, that another plan that has to be rethought, that is for a call for a sewage treatment plant. So far, we're thinking of putting housing and everything in that, which is really not productive. It's okay, you know, people are patronizing the businesses, maybe yes, maybe no. We have to think in terms of a system that feeds, that is self-sustaining, that money, that provides money for the system. Now, putting a sewage treatment plant. I've studied sewage treatment plants for over 50 years, all right? My graduate study was all done in this. I've toured, I don't know how many sewage treatment plants. You know, I know what they're like. And it could expand, okay? Now, if you decide, if we don't put affordable housing in town, you would not need the treatment plant. You would not need the treatment plant. Pine Plains has the highest amount of natural percolation, being physically what we are, where we are. Trying to get church property is a long haul to try and get that, and to put that in town, that is unsightly, okay? And I think we are going to have to rethink this. I took a drive through town. I live in town. I live on Main Street, North Main Street. I took a drive in town, and I saw 200 quarter-acre plots in this town. 200 quarter-acre plots. I come from a town where every quarter-acre plot was developed, the incorporated village of Northport on Long Island. Now, we have room to expand on those quarter-acre plots. People sell off their quarter-acre, you put a house here, there. We have 200 quarter-acre plots spread out that can dissipate the water and not impact our lake, because you're going to impact our lake if you put it on that church property. It is contiguous with the lake. And it used to flood, it was a lake, people would ice skate on it. Okay, one more thing. Tom Carvel is kind of way ahead. Now I'm thinking now where we would come in is locating outside of town a food processing plant, and then we need the sewage, the treatment plant with a food processing plant which generates capital, 200 people in town adding their jobs, and not just the school system, which is 62% of this town, which I am paying, educating our children, great, but it's not producing anything. We need sewage treatment plant, and we see small family farms are cropping back up again. That's where you're going to put your plant. And And Mr. Durst, he is proposing, I think he had, okay, like 900, which will be located. We will have the population to patronize businesses. And incidentally, 3 businesses require the smallest customer base: food, hairdresser, and gasoline. So I don't know how this fits in, but I'm just trying to make some sense out of this. And we've got some people who I nudged the guy and told me to be quiet. I said, you want to see a sewage treatment plant in your backyard? You know?
Can I just ask what parcel?
And I'm sorry. Thank you for the floor, ma'am.
What parcel, you mentioned a parcel flooding. Could you tell me what parcel
A
flooding?
parcel, what I would say, that I would talk to Mr. Durst.
You ice skated on a parcel. Which parcel flooded? You said you used to ice skate on a parcel.
Yes, the church property.
The church, okay, no.
The church property, and I will name the individual.
People didn't believe that the groundwater, someone made a comment that
It's
they
in the
did not
newspaper.
believe the groundwater was that close to the surface.
Yes.
And it's very clear from a soil morphology standpoint, it is. So I just love that you observed that because we feel
It's
really
contiguous.
that we said it that high. So
I am
thank you.
speaking your language, and it was Helen Netter. 75 years ago, there was a study that was done in a paper. A story was about comparing my daughter's childhood, my daughter Lona Peck's childhood, with the childhood of Helen Netter, which was, now it's more than 75 years ago. But that later, people would talk, I mean, people aren't alive today, but this was back here. This was late.
Well, thank you very much. And I think we've all heard, thank you very much.
I just had to say one.
Wait, you know what? Yes, no, you're it, yes. Sorry.
Quick question on transporting the liquids from
Yes.
individual parcels.
Yes,
Is that done through gravity feed
Yes.
or pumping station?
gravity feed, no pumping stations. There's a-
Even with only a 3-foot,
Yeah,
area to move
once you get down to the parcel itself, the general treatment system is a pumped flow system, it's a dose system. So you have a tank down there and that would slowly dose to the actual treatment facility. But no, from a gravity perspective, we can get from here to there. Generally, that would be the approach. We have not completely designed the system. Why is that? Well, that's our preference, why? When it comes to wastewater treatment facilities, solid handling is often the source of biggest pain in the butt, the most operator problems, what produces odors. You have a wonderful small solids handling system, and that's called a licensed septic hauler. It also means that a single family house that has maybe 2 people living in it, let's say, they don't need as much, they need to be checked upon, but not much attention as a restaurant. So you can really strategically time your solids removal. And then we've got smaller diameter pipes, cleaner wastewater, and we're just disposing of the effluent at the site. So from a dollars to dollars standpoint, taking all the solids down to one location or keeping the solids in the individual tanks and being on a standard rotation of pump and of just removing the solids, the liquids moving on to the site, is really cost effective. And from a nuisance perspective and an operation and management perspective, the most cost-effective way to handle it.
Is it possible you might have to have 1 or 2 collection tanks in neighborhoods that then pump to the center
Oh, yes.
chamber?
If we've got some multiple type parcels really near each other, and we haven't assumed that, we've assumed every parcel a single tank. But if there's a place where there is multiple pipe parcels together, one tank with one pump, with one gravity effluent system, that might be the best solution. And also be more cost effective. Just, again, we're preliminary, that's a design decision. At some point, if this proceeded and we were lucky enough to be the engineers, one of us would be in every single basement, Rory. You gotta look at every basement, look at every septic tank, and really design it customly. Yeah, watch out, what's down there?
Can you
See some
speak-
interesting things.
Can you speak to Pat Gadetti's concerns about visual impact or other ways to mitigate maybe potential visual impacts of the site itself?
I can talk, but if anyone's interested, what's better than going to a wastewater treatment
Yeah, you can
So,
look at the Hillsdale.
this one is, obviously, Hillsdale's super easy. Anytime you want to go to Hillsdale, I'd love to meet you in Hillsdale. I think half the DPW eats their lunch down at the treatment plant. This is the leaching field for Rochester, Vermont. The Hillsdale, the Hyde Park system, they left from an operation, Dutchess County Water and Wastewater, because of snow. Because of snow, they left this a little proud, so it was easier. But that tank stands at your knee, and now those bushes are a year old, and you don't see the tanks. That's the entire 35,000 gallon treatment system.
So the profile, like only 2 feet above ground.
This tank, so.
I wonder if you could, you sort of shared, I don't know, worst case scenario, but what it could cost us, sorry, I don't know, what the most it might cost us, but do you have any ways of estimating if some of these grants were to come through, how the cost, total build-up cost might be defrayed?
I think that's a great follow-up, Rory, as far as, I'm happy to present that. I've seen people, engineers, we all do different ways of presenting things. The last thing that I want to have happen is paint this picture and then the funding doesn't come up, or it goes out to bid and it's way past. So I'm sorry, I know it's maybe the more conservative way is less attractive or enthusiastic, but I'd rather you know where I think the price tag is right now in a more conservative sense than underball it and be very disappointing to you all. So I realize we can look at it from many different perspectives, but I'd rather give you where I think the top end is. There's a gentleman being really patient in the back corner.
Well, I just wanted, I wonder if you wouldn't mind reiterating, because I think it's helpful. Sometimes facts need to be repeated a few times to sink in. So nobody in like neighborhoods behind the high school or, on Poplar and such, no one's affected in terms of cost, right? None of those people are going to have to pay for this. The town is not paying for this. Is that, could you explain that again?
And it's New York State municipal law. It's not what your town's picking to do. It is the New York State municipal law. Only parcels served can be billed. We can talk about different ways to bill it. There is a whole bunch of different ways towns do that billing, but the only people who can pay the bills are the parcels being served. None of this debt service. Yeah.
It had the same.
No, the town could pursue grants for that project, which is what I'm recommending, but you can't put the cost on a parcel that's not being served. I think it's, what do you think it was, Kyle? Let's go there, but then Orange Jacket is next.
I thought I heard you indicate there are two votes. Well, kind of two stages within this community to approval. One is, the people or properties who are in the district signing a document saying, yeah, we're in.
Or a vote. There's two alternatives.
That's an alternative.
Petition or referendum.
Yep, thanks, Rory.
But if the people who are included in the district sign on, then there's no further vote needed.
Correct.
But on the other hand, no one else is affected in terms of cost. Only the people who sign on.
If there was a referendum, it would be the same. It would just be a different process, more cumbersome.
Got it.
And so when I was talking about,
But only the people in the district would vote, not the whole town.
there's a more informal process right now, which is the town and any members of the town providing feedback to the town leadership saying, we do feel like this should proceed, let's see what the next step is, or we're supportive of the next step. And that's informal feedback you give your town leadership and the wastewater committee, and to encourage, yeah, I think this is a good thing or not a good thing for the town. When it actually comes to the last stage of the district formation, there is a formal vote with a document that's legally filed with New York State. And that's the formal acceptance process that just the parcels impacted financially would provide their feedback on.
But Does establishing the district?
Oh, you just totally jumped ahead. What?
Does establishing the district require a vote from the town?
Just the parcel served. To establish the district, the parcel served are who votes on that.
Yeah, the proposed district.
We should kick him in the knee. What was your concern?
Sorry.
I'm not advocating for that.
I think most of you know me. I've been involved in town government for at least 40 years, including serving as the chair of the planning board, the chair of the zoning board of appeals, the chair of the crafts committee, town assessor, and as town supervisor for 6 years. I served at the county level of government for over 30 years as a professional planner, including the director of the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority for 15 years. I probably worked on almost every comprehensive planning that the town has undertaken in the past 40 years. We've spent countless hours in meetings and with surveys asking the community what they want for Pine Plains. Each time the answer comes back, we want almost what we have, a small, compact community center where we can walk to our services, be they schools, stores, post office, businesses, restaurants, and government offices. We do not want sprawl along every highway leading to the town center. The only way you can have this compact development is to have central water at central sewer. When I was the town supervisor, we established the Pine Plains Water District with an abundance of grant assistance. It is now the time to establish a public sewer district, and the timing couldn't be better with the just passed infrastructure bill. I can tell you in the past, there was a time, the engineer talked about it, and this goes back to my early days, the same type of money became available. The feds paid 75%, the state paid 12.5%. Every community could have had sewer for 87.5% grant funding. And I worked with multiple communities throughout the county where I would go in and they would lament because they were larger and they were going through some of the same stuff that we are and say, geez, why did we stop? Some of them stopped at this point because there were people who said, oh, geez, we don't want sewer. And, and then 5 or 10 years later, they're going, we were so foolish. And I guess what I'm saying to the town is go through, set whatever the affordable number is, form the district, go for the grant money, because this only comes about every generation or several generations. We are about to hit it at the jackpot time to do it. This is the time, form the district, set whatever your affordable number is. I don't care if it's 300, 400, 500, 600, whatever that number is. You don't have to go forward if you don't get it. Form the district and go forward. This is the time. And so I really encourage the town to, pursue the grants, set your number, and go for it. This is no time to mess around any longer. Get it done.
Well said, well said.
Yes, sir. Oh, who's in charge?
Sorry.
Rory's in charge.
Dan, go for it.
I just wanted to know about how much, if you do get church property, exactly how much space would you need? How much acreage?
Oh, and that's the graph we had up. So right now, to have expansion, we've set 5 acres.
5 acres.
If they're looking towards, with the difference in the zoning that
Right.
Rory spoke about,
Right.
the additional density.
Yes.
If there's more bedrooms, we need more space to dispose of wastewater. And so that's the graph I put up, that relationship.
So right now, just the way it starts now, you would just need 5 acres.
5. And we put a preliminary map together. That 5 acres can shift to wherever it makes sense, and it's got to be a concentrated, consolidated effort. We just can't. All the soil's about the same. We got to have offsets for all the neighbors, obviously, but certainly we can work with their planning too. They have a concept, I'm sure. We know what we need. I'm sure we could figure out a way for everyone's needs to be met. Do you,
Ariel here, sorry, I think that's it.
and also that gentleman right there, and this one right there, so.
The alternative site is the property behind your and my building.
Behind your house there, yeah.
Right. And that's also, would that be 5 acres as well. What's the cost, size, and system difference between the church site and that site?
It's just fittable, super tight, so it's a less desirable site.
It would need Dan Adams's empty flag lot as well, I believe, which he's not interested in. But that made it hard, that we reached that juncture earlier in the year.
We think we could do the 13.5, the 20 is really challenging, but the 13.5 might fit. It's just less, soils were very similar, just a less desirable parcel because it's so challenging from all the side offsets and it's tight, so.
So you could only do a 13.5 system there without Dan Adams?
Aaron will know specifically, but I think that's true.
It needs 13.5, but it gives us very limited flexibility, which is why it's not recommended. So as a backup plan, we can revisit, but it's just not the ideal scenario.
Would that limit the amount of businesses then?
It wouldn't be able to service development at the Catholic Church lot, for example, but I think it could perhaps service the commercial district without the residential.
13.5 has expansion in it. It's just not much. So then if you add additional parcels and add, say, that's how we get to 20, making sure there's additional flexibility, so. Because it is based on actual usage rates of water, not, some communities don't have either, right? And so then you have guidelines that you use to estimate per business, and those are very conservative. But in this case, we actually have water usage rates and then could expand upon them to escalate to the future. But the question is, you only get so, 13.5 would not be bad, and it would allow businesses to expand to a certain level, but 20 is a really comfortable number that could meet everyone's needs and add for some housing.
If you could do it, you'd want to do it and be done with it and have it be the size it could be.
Well, that's 13.5, that's water usage now?
No, water usage plus additional expansion factors. So we added, we've used the peak month for every parcel or the peak usage, so we haven't, it's an average based on peak.
And then it's a multiple of that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure who's next, but maybe Jim.
Just to give folks an idea of size, the town center where the condos are, they're approved for build out of 48 units. They have 12 acres. Church lot is 20 acres. So if you put 48 units on 12 acres, you're left with 8. Just to give a sense of size.
Well, minus what you might need for the project itself.
This gentleman.
Yep.
I think you've treated most of what I wanted to clarify. You gave the baseline figure of 13.5 gallons per day, and I thought that was for the existing users of the proposed district, with a comfortable fudge factor bringing up to 20,000. Now, is the church
20,000 also includes 48 bedrooms at the church parcel.
okay? Because when you first introduced the parameters you were using to set up the size of the infrastructure that you were going to put into the potential district, it sounded like you were going to allow the increase from 13,500 to 20,000 in order to enable some of those gaps to be developed, some of those unsightly parking lots to be filled with thriving retail establishments. And foot traffic, which I've never seen. I've lived in Pine Plains for 20 years, and I've not seen much foot traffic. People drive to the post office, they don't walk. They drive to Stewart's, they don't walk. They drive to Peck's, they drive to the post office. So I think that the term foot traffic is unfortunate. I mean, we're Americans.
Stay out of that one.
So if it's built for 20,000 capacity and the church puts 48 units on the back of their lot, then there's really not much additional capacity for increased commercial development.
No, I'm sorry if I'm not saying it as clearly as I should. Everything has additional development capacity
Right.
plus that in the 20,000. But no, none of these scenarios include no additional wastewater from the hamlet. Everything has additional capacity. Every scenario we're looking at.
Do you know what your flow rate for those 32 properties is now per day? If it's 13.5
Let-
one, do you think it's like 8,000 or something? 5,000?
Why don't we,
I can follow up, I can't.
yeah,
I think the
no,
13.5 figure
let's
has
look that up.
significant room over top of our existing flow already.
We'll take a peek, but I could send that by, let's look at that, and I could clarify that by email, and the kind of gallons we've added.
Well, each property should have meters, so meters, we should be able to cross-reference the meters for those 32 properties to know what the flow rate is, excluding all leakage at the bank that we see them digging up there every day.
Because generally for wastewater sizing, your size on average flows. So to come up with a base flow, we picked like the peak scenario, and then we added an additional factor of safety on it, and that got to the 13.5. And then we added more factor of safety and 48 units to get to the 20. And what was it, maybe like 19 something? Yeah, but 20 is a good design number, you know, so you're always rounding up as an engineer to get to a nice even number. But no matter what, we're not being flagrant with our recommendation as far as you've got twice the amount of flow as you need, but there's definitely healthy wiggle room in there to, fudge factor, that's an engineering term. That's great.
Pat, you got another one?
Yes, were you already contacted if you're in that district?
My understanding
I
is
got a letter in the mail.
I got a letter too.
Letter in the mail.
Okay, so if you're one of the 32 in that district, you would have already been contacted.
That's, so from the engineers did not do that, the town committee
Right.
did that, but my understanding is they talked it. They were
Okay.
doggedly going after, talking to every owner, from my understanding.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm calling on someone else.
Okay.
But suppose you build this, and you have the boundaries that you talked about, and 10 years from now, there's a need to tie into a sewer system for some reason. Is it possible, or is this system, once it's set up, that's as much as it's going to handle?
Yeah.
Good question.
Very interesting sort of yin and yang question, right? So of course, we don't want to design anything to have no flexibility, and the goal would be, especially, you know, a contiguous parcel on the outside, they decide they need to join, that capacity is there. But also, your comprehensive plan would not like to facilitate a hamlet like expanding out either way on both crossroads. So it's a really sweet spot we've got to find. Enough capacity for those scenarios and for businesses to expand, but also not so you're encouraging development that's not consistent with your comprehensive plan. So I think we're in a good, I think we've made a solid recommendation.
Or commercial business. Are you imagining residences that might want to tie in, or commercial businesses that might, both? Yeah.
I mean, if one of these parcels close by who's not in it now, and all of a sudden their system fails, we've got to have the capacity to be able to say, of course, you need to join the system. Don't spend $40,000 with a raised system or something. And I'll try to summarize it more, because I feel like there's a lot of good questions regarding this topic that I could provide a better breakdown on, so you can see what's your extra under both of these scenarios. Like, what's the number coming from? Where's the extra? And then under the 20, what's the number coming from? What's the extra? What do we think that would facilitate? Because I feel like that's a theme here with the questions. So let's do some nice breakdowns so you can all see that.
I have a second question too, and it's based upon what you said. In the water district, if you were not hooked up to the system, you still had to pay a benefit unit. Now, in your system, if a property owner decides, well, I don't want to join this system, does he pay a benefit unit?
So you can see, we're designing a contiguous system here. So the idea is that's the district. If you're outside the district, you would pay no benefit unit because there's no pipe going by your house. If you're in the middle of it and a pipe goes by your house, that's the same situation. So that's why the town has done such outreach to this core group. But if you are not in the district, you are not paying a benefit unit. And that's typically a benefit unit is your capital cost recovery. And then the dollars per gallon you spend, that funds the operation and maintenance of the system. And so if you're served, but then never put a drop of wastewater down the pipe, so say for some reason you had a property that you no one was in it. Not what we want to see. But there's a cost that's the base capital cost because you were served. But then there's also a cost of your gallons per dollar per gallon, just like your water bill. Obviously, if you're not discharging anything or using any water, you're not paying that portion of the bill. So
there is a benefit unit then?
Well, the bill would be broke up in two different ways. But if you're not in the district, you're not having a benefit.
But I'm saying if you're in the district and you're not hooked up, you're still going to pay something.
The health department would
Yes, I think
similarly
so.
to the, yes.
Yes,
yes. Yes.
We're in the district, we pay.
But also from the legal perspective, the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater rules, if you are in a service area of wastewater, you must connect. And it's surprising they sometimes let that go with water, but typically right now, if you were to put a district in, they're very adamant about people connecting to water as well. So that's just the state of the health department rules as well. I think here than here. Do you agree?
Yep.
Do we have any idea how many of those 32 parcels are agreeing with this, or how many are disagreeing?
I don't know that exact number.
Roundabout,
I presume the majority, vast majority of
Feedback we've
people,
gotten is very positive.
yeah, are into it. What are you guys thinking? How you feeling? Maybe? So people are still figuring it out. Tonight was a big part of that to see what it might be. And these guys have put a document together too that can be looked at more closely with, really specific engineering information and overlays.
I think they gave a very good example of what's going on.
Yeah, no, good presentation. Yeah.
I live on Poplar 50, so my property borders the church. If I need to hook up, who pays that cost? Do I have to pay the cost just like the water system? Or is there a contingency?
$1,000. So if you were in the original district, and this is another great example of just having this conversation and making sure we're bringing this conversation to the town at large and not just a small portion. The general feedback we've gotten is the interest is very limited to a small area. But during that phase, anyone who's connected, that entire process is paid for. If later on down the road, someone later on decides to join, the work that happened on their property would be their cost, unless in a future phase, your entire street says, wow, we're having a problem here for whatever reason. That absolutely the town would go back, observing the comments made that we are in a very wonderful spot right now for funding, that there might not be as much funding, but to try to facilitate funding to say then, we're going to expand the system this street's got failing systems, really needs assistance, and go and pursue grant funding to support the expansion to cover that street.
If this gentleman or someone else finds themselves living in a property that's adjacent to the proposed district, and today they think, well, maybe I'm considering it, they want to come back in a week or two and say, hey, could I be in the district? I'm not in it now, but I'm adjacent to it. Would we look to accommodate them and place them in the district?
The shape of this district and who's in it and who's not is, this is the feasibility study stage. This feedback is essential because if there's parcels that are interested or at least asking to be considered, want to see the dollar value, what would be the monthly charge, that's the feedback we need. It's locked down in that map plan and report stage. So it's this piece of time in between in the district formation phase where that's so much what the town and the engineers need to hear is who would want to be in this, because if there are contiguous parcels, there is absolutely no reason, especially if, you know, it's practically right by the parcel, to connect it. It makes a lot of sense, especially with short distance parcels. Serving someone like a mile over there, that is not going to be cost effective. That would be quite additional cost. Serving contiguous parcels is cost effective.
So if anyone's not contiguous to the proposed district and does want to be considered, it's a good time to mention it to these guys, because they could put the dotted line, they could extend it out in the early parts of it. Makes a lot of sense. Jim? Mary?
I would think that anybody who was in the district, the sewer district, but did not hook up, but paid the cost benefit price, would realize a higher value for their house at the time of sale.
That's what's generally found, yes.
The tax assessors will.
No, it would not increase the assessment.
And for people who are landlords downtown, I don't know if we're allowed to have 2 rental units per property or 3, but you get 1 more rental unit. You're permitted should you tie into the system as well, which is nice to hear for those of us who want to have a few more people in the downtown and keep it foot trafficky.
I just wanted to thank you for the work you've done up until now, and also for tonight's time and presentation and helping us to understand more about what's involved with this. I also wanted to thank the town. So thank you very much.
Can I say something? I just want to say that this is being videoed, and people who couldn't make it tonight, or you want to review what was said tonight, it will be on Pine Plains Views probably tomorrow.
And will the presentation itself be available?
Presentation, the report is electronically with the town, the final version, and also we've taken back, we will provide a really nice succinct breakdown of 13, 5, and 20, like 1 page that shows where that is, because I think that's a really common question, and I want to make sure you all have a really understandable answer to that question.
Can you just put the map up one more time?
And again, so starting tomorrow, you can go to the Town of Pine Plains website and you can look at the full report, details, photos, maps, images, with all that flow rate information. It'll be up starting tomorrow on the website.
They did a very good job.
You guys are doing
It goes down to El Russell.
it.